Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about 2 ways to listen for his heart message. My guest, Hannah's husband, broke her heart when he said he wasn't in love with her anymore and wasn't attracted to her anymore. He told her he wanted to sleep with someone else. Their marriage was full of coldness, huge daily blow-ups, and he didn't desire her sexually. But Hannah made a decision and took action that has changed everything. Today, her husband is so affectionate and their sex life is amazing. He even said he was in love with her again and that he was so happy with her. She's going to describe exactly what she did so you can do it too. And then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which is both uninspiring and unoriginal. I promise you've heard it before many times, but it just doesn't work. All that is coming up, but first I'm going to share 2 ways to listen to his heart message. Now imagine you had a magic wand and you could wave it in your marriage to make it the way you want it to be. How would your marriage be different? How would you make it? Maybe your husband would do a lot more chores or be more attentive and affectionate. Maybe he would seek your company and be trying to kiss you whenever he got the chance. Your husband wants to be all that for you so he can make you happy. All men want to succeed, especially with their wives. So what's stopping him? Well, it could be, and it often is, that he is misunderstood. He may be trying to express his love, but it just sounds like a complaint. Or maybe he's trying to protect you, but it comes out as control or criticism. Maybe he wants to make you happy, but he's afraid he's not succeeding. How do you know what his true heart message is? Hearing a heart message is all about where you're listening from. If you're expecting the best, you'll hear his heart. If you're expecting the worst, well, that is probably what you'll hear. Here are 2 ways to listen for your husband's heart message. Number 1, listen to what's underneath his complaint. Maybe your husband offers to start dinner, but in the same breath, he complains about how he's worked so hard already and he's tired because all weekend he was doing yard work and working overtime. Plus, he did all that paperwork for the insurance. Like he's the only person who might be tired, right? He sounds like a whiny baby. And you might think he's just trying to shirk his responsibilities and dump them all on you. Maybe it's easier just to do things yourself than listen to him complain. But what if his complaints were less about his unwillingness to pitch in and were actually an awkward plea for acknowledgement? In other words, maybe he's listing and relisting the things he did because he wants to know that you saw and you appreciated his contributions. Sure, he's going about it the wrong way. No question. You have to have a very generous listening ear to hear his heart message that he wants to be appreciated in this situation. But what if you could clear up this whole misunderstanding by simply saying, "You do so much around here. Thanks for working so hard to support our family and for all that you do around the house too. It makes me so happy." Not only do husbands tend to stop complaining about what they did when you appreciate them, they seem to walk taller and prouder when they know that they made their wife happy. They even go around looking for other things they can do to make you happier still. Number 2, listen for the love. One student described her husband talking about how unhealthy their friend's work was because it was so sedentary. And this friend was so sedentary. And then he said to her, "Just like your job is, just like you." And she thought, what? I am not sedentary. He's been drinking. He doesn't know what he's talking about. This is ridiculous. And she started to say all that. And he started to react saying, "I know you think I'm just drunk and I won't remember any of this anyway. So They were about to go down an old, very familiar dirt road. But instead, she stopped herself. She decided to listen for his heart message. She asked herself, what else besides a criticism of her could he have meant with his words about her sitting too much? And that's when she realized he had been concerned about this friend's health, which meant he may also have been concerned about her health. And she decided to see that as his love for her and wanting her to live a long time. So she said, I know you're bringing this up because I'm so dear to you and you want me to be healthy. And he just melted. He agreed with her enthusiastically and became very tender. And he said, that's right. You are so dear to me. And I don't tell you enough, but I love you so much and I always want the best for you. So she got to feel warm and fuzzy instead of defensive and hurt by his words because she decided to assume he had the best intentions, knowing that he loves her and he wants her to be happy. He validated that response when she decided to reflect on what she knows about his heart. Something big is happening on the Laura Doyle campus, and you're invited. Last summer, I hosted a free 5-day Adored Wife Challenge, and thousands of women joined to take the practical steps to make their marriages last and thrive. And even I was amazed at the astounding results they got. We're about to start the 5-day Adored Wife Challenge in 2022 on January 10th, where I'll share my best stuff for free. Register now at lauradoyle.org/challenge so you don't miss any of the action because this only happens twice a year. Join us on our mission to end world divorce and go to lauradoyle.org/challenge. I'll see you there. I guess Hannah's husband broke her heart when he said he wasn't in love with her anymore and he wasn't attracted to her anymore. He told her he wanted to sleep with someone else. Their marriage was full of coldness, huge daily blowups, and he didn't desire her sexually. But Hannah made a decision and she took action that has changed everything. Today, her husband is so affectionate and their sex life is amazing. He even said he was in love with her again and that he was so happy with her. She's going to describe exactly what she did so you can do it too. Hannah, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. It's a huge honor.
Well, I want to hear the whole story. So let's go back to the bad old days. What was it like?
Oh boy. So for me to take you to the bad old days, I think I first have to take you a little bit to the good old days because I had my fairy tale love story, 100% out of a storybook with this man. I had always heard stories of people saying that when they met their spouse, they instantly knew that this was the person they were going to marry. And I never thought that that would actually happen to me. But he and I met at work. And before he started, when I was told that they had filled his position, they didn't tell me anything about the person, not even the gender, just we hired someone for this role. And I just had this thought flash into my head of this is going to be my husband. And I was like, that's weird. Where did that come from? And then we met about 2 months later. And honestly, he was my hero from day one. He and I work in a very stressful field. We deal with a lot of medical emergencies, and he was so protective of me from day one. He's always, always there for me. And, you know, one thing led to another. We fell in love and it was magical and it was happily ever after. But really nobody tells you what happens after happily ever after. And I really quickly discovered that it wasn't happily ever after anymore. I could feel him getting more and more distant and cold, and I couldn't understand why that was happening. And it scared me. It really scared me. I came into things with a lot of fear that I didn't even realize I had. I had seen a lot of divorce growing up. I had seen a lot of infidelity growing up. Not from my own parents. They actually have a wonderful marriage, but from relatives, family, friends, all across the board. And I was so afraid of that happening to me. And so I took every single indicator that he was slipping away from me as this huge crisis. And I would freak out, and I was always wanting to fix things. And I thought I was doing everything right. I read so many books. I followed so many relationship coaches. I did everything, I statements, and can we just talk about this? And every time I tried to talk about it, he just got angrier and angrier and angrier. And I was like, how are we ever supposed to make anything better if you just won't even talk to me? And it came to a point after probably about 4 months of him just being really cold and standoffish and not telling me why, that I guess just exploded. I couldn't take it anymore. I was so hurt, and it just came out as anger. And this is so embarrassing to admit now, but he was driving me to work because my car was in the shop. So he was actually being my hero in that way, but I didn't see it that way at the time, because the previous night he had complained the whole night about having to do it and how it was a huge inconvenience for him, which was just so hurtful for me. I let him have it the entire way to work. I just unloaded everything about how he was so cold and he was just cruel and I didn't understand the things he said. And that sent us into a spiral of just daily blow-ups. And I mean, multiple times a day. We would wake up and we would fight, and we would storm off to our separate cars to go to work. And then throughout the workday, we would fight over text the entire day, which usually looked like me sending him long messages trying to get him to just understand how I felt, because I thought it was so easy to resolve if he could just understand. And then he would block me. And he would block me and he would say, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. And we wouldn't talk for hours. And then we would get home and we would fight the entire night. And I was always the one having to initiate sexually. I was getting rejected a solid half of the time. When I did, I had no idea what was wrong, because we had so much passion and chemistry before. And it just didn't even feel like he was the same person. It didn't even feel like he was the same person. And I felt so hopeless. I felt so hopeless. I had no idea what I could do. I thought I had tried absolutely everything.
So was there a point where you thought, okay, we can't go on like this?
Yeah, there definitely was. I thought I had tried everything, and we ended up getting in such a huge fight at one point, that we stayed up the entire night screaming at each other, and then continued it the next morning. And he was so angry that he said that he wanted to separate and he didn't want to see me, and he wasn't sure for how long. And so I actually ended up taking an unexpected trip out of state to go see my parents for about 2 weeks to get some separation and space temporarily for the two of us. And we decided we were going to both take that time to just think about what we even wanted. And he was so eager to just really start pushing things in a direction I didn't want to go, that I made this desperate last ditch bid to him. I said, okay, when I come back, let's just see if we can get through one weekend without fighting. That's such a low standard, but that's really where we had to start. I was like, let's just see if we can get through one weekend without fighting. And if we can, will you please stay committed to this and give this another chance? Because I knew that I still wanted this marriage. I knew that. So I went up there and we barely talked at all for the first couple days. But while I was up there, I found your program. And I joined the Ridiculously Happy Wife program. And I had actually my first group coaching call with Darlene. And while I was actually on that call with Darlene, I got a text from him. And he had been awake the entire night drinking. And he was sending me a lot of angry things. And that was when he texted me, would you be angry if I decided to sleep with someone else? And I was...
Yeah, no.
I was just devastated. And I was multiple states away. There was nothing I could do to stop him if he wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't believe that we'd fallen that far. Yeah, I was devastated.
Incredibly painful, this whole thing, and exhausting, it sounds like, too, because that's a lot of stress. It's probably hard to even function in the rest of your life with all this going on.
Yeah, I wasn't sleeping. I was having difficulties at work. I was having headaches every single day. I was just completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, it sounds really terrifying. Oh my gosh. So would you be mad if I slept with someone else while you were on a group coaching call with Coach Darlene?
Yep.
And so, that sounds, I hope that was the low point. Was that the low point? Oh
it was, thankfully.
Okay. Yeah, thankfully, because it gets any worse. Like, oh, this is hard.
Yeah.
And then at some point he had said that he didn't love you. Is that right? Was that when?
Yep. Yeah. So right before I left to go out of state, that was what he said. He said that he was not in love with me at all, that he wasn't attracted to me, and yeah, that he wouldn't care if he never touched me again. That was what. Yeah.
Ouch. But you had hope still.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get that hope?
I think I've always been a very optimistic person by nature, and I knew that I wanted this, and I'm not somebody who gives up on things that I want. I'm a fighter. So I was just determined that I was going to find something that was going to make it work. And like I said, I was actually on my first group coaching call with Darlene when this happened. And I remember frantically typing into the text box while she's in the middle of coaching somebody else, "Help, you guys, you just sent me this text message. I don't know what to do." But thankfully, I had learned a little bit from the check-ins that I heard on the group call and the idea of an SFP. And I decided to try it. And I decided, I don't even know how I had this, I guess just I was channeling my inner Laura Doyle. I had this idea to say, it doesn't matter because I know you wouldn't do that. I know you're faithful. That was my response to him. I'm so sorry. And that was my response to him. And he said, "Yeah, you're right, but I don't really want to talk to you right now. And, I hate you for everything you've done," and a lot more anger. But he said, "Yeah, you're right."
Oh my gosh.
And that showed me that there was a glimmer of hope.
Oh, that must have taken a lot of courage to say those words, but it was also, must have felt like such a life raft.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got some relief from his response, I bet. Some comfort from him affirming that he is who you decided to see in him in that moment. So he was saying, would you be mad if I slept with someone else? And your spouse fulfilling prophecy, the thing you decided to focus on was, I know you would never do that. You're a faithful man. What a great example of how to use spouse fulfilling prophecy, even in a very low moment. So I love that. Okay. So, all right. So what happened from there? What else did you start doing differently than what you had been doing?
Yeah. So that very first day that I was on that group call, I actually signed up and joined your Facebook group also for the Ridiculously Happy Wife. And I believe that I was just reading through the archives. I think you had posted somewhere in there. You have a blog article called the 30-Day Challenge.
Right.
And I decided I was going to start that. I like timelines and I like measurable goals. So I decided, okay, I can do this for 30 days. But I decided I was going to make it a little bit harder on myself. I decided that while I was doing the challenge activities, I was also not allowed to criticize him for 30 days. Didn't matter what he did, even if he slept with someone else. I had to get it to that level of relinquishing control, that for 30 days, I was going to try this out and I was just going to see what happened. Wow. It couldn't get any worse. Right.
Oh my gosh. No. Right. You're feeling like you're at the bottom. It sounds like you're at the bottom. So, so tell us a little bit about that. Like what did you do during the 30-day challenge? So no criticism. That's huge. That's a
Yeah.
big one.
No criticism. So a lot of duct tape, a lot of just keeping my mouth shut in situations where I normally would have let him have it. But mostly a lot of gratitude, a lot of self-care, making myself happy regardless of how he felt, and a lot of gratitude.
Mm.
Um, I realized throughout the course of that month that I had been so prickly, like a prickly little porcupine. I was just so easily offended. I had the realization that I wouldn't want to be around me either,
Mm.
because you talk about the concept of a wife mirror. And I realized that when he was looking in his, all he was seeing was every single thing that he was doing wrong and every single way that he wasn't good enough. And I didn't want that to be the case anymore. I wanted him to look in that mirror and only see how amazing I thought he was and how much of a hero he was. And I decided to make that my focus, really my focus. And it was amazing for me to see how much evidence I could find that that really was the case. He really has never stopped being my hero. Even in the worst times that we were having, there was still so much evidence there that he did love me. I just had to look for it. And I just had to show him that I saw it.
So what kinds of evidence did you find that he still loved you even after he said he didn't?
Yeah. I started really, really small at first, really small. I started with the fact that he was still there. I actually started using this phrase a lot in the Ridiculously Happy Wife group coaching calls. I said, men who want to leave, leave. Just
Yeah.
because they say that they're going to, if they're actually still there, then they don't want to that badly. Because if they wanted to be gone, they'd be gone. And he wasn't. He was still there.
Oh, love that, Hannah. So
And for,
wise. That's
yeah,
really, his actions spoke a lot louder than his words. Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. At the end of the day, he was still in my home and he was faithful. You know, for all of his talk, he had never been unfaithful to me. And again, that actions speak louder than words. Again, I had that evidence. And honestly, just he did so many sweet things for me. Even then, I came back. Well, I guess I'll just say this. I came back from my trip and we did successfully make it a weekend without fighting. In fact,
Oh,
I think we made it about 6 weeks without fighting before I slipped. I'm a mere mortal woman,
yeah, that's
but
right.
we made it, I think, about 6 weeks, and before we hadn't even been able to make it about 5 hours without fighting.
Wow.
And he responded so quickly to just being appreciated and being seen for the man that he is, who wants to make me happy. The evidence just started stockpiling. I started small, but it got bigger and bigger by the day.
Wow. Now, so I have so many questions because that's a pretty dramatic and fast turnaround, right?
Yeah.
Six weeks of peace. So, so a couple things come to mind. So, one piece that I think is just like, speaking of mere mortal women, was any part of you upset that you were the one, like you'd been reading all these books and now you joined this program? And why wasn't he working on himself? Like, did it feel unfair to you, or how did you deal with that?
Oh yeah. It definitely did at first. I I mean, I'll be fully honest, I felt that he was emotionally and verbally abusive.
Yeah.
I really felt that he was 100% the problem. And I didn't understand why he wouldn't work on himself at all. He wouldn't, so much as pick up a book.
Yeah.
But I also realized that sometimes if you want something done, you have to do it yourself. And I wanted I wanted to be happy with him. And if that meant that I had to do it myself, then I was willing to do it myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually I switched to actually finding so much power in that. I like that I have the control. And that sounds so horrible because the program's all about relinquishing control, but I,
Right.
I like that I have the control of myself.
This is one of the mysteries of the whole thing, right? It's like you give up the control to get the control, but or the power. Yeah. So you had that experience and you liked it. You liked it. But at first it was a little bit of a bitter pill, it sounds like.
It was hard.
And so then it sounds like you completely changed how you were showing up. You must have, right? Because you couldn't go 5 hours without fighting. And then you went 6 weeks. And then, maybe went back to your old ways like we all do from time to time. How would you change so dramatically so fast?
I think that finding your program and hearing what you have to say in the modules and hearing Coach Darlene, she's such a gift, and Coach Sue, they're just so full of wisdom. Hearing the insights that they had, it really just made a whole mindset shift click in me in a way that had never happened before. And I just realized, wow, I wouldn't want to be around me either. All I'm doing is making him see everything that's wrong with him, which is the very thing that I hate that he does to me. I feel like I'm never good enough for him. And here this whole time I've been making him feel like he's never good enough for me. And I just realized I really didn't want to be that person. I had an amazing man, and that was the story that I wanted to show him, was that he was an amazing man and I was grateful for him. And I just decided to live everything accordingly.
Yeah, no, that is really remarkable. I hear so much of a click with you. It's like you flipped a switch, decided to really be respectful as a big part of it, right? I think expecting the best and seeing the best in him was bringing a lot of respect. And it sounds like he responded very well. And so you had this 6 weeks with no fighting. What else was happening that let you know, like, okay, this is working maybe somewhat better than like I statements?
I think it was probably actually about that 6-week mark, or maybe just at the very end of the 30-day challenge, where I saw that first indicator. And that was that he actually apologized to me for having said those things, specifically about threatening to sleep with other people. And he said, I would never actually do that. I was just so angry with you and I didn't know how to express it. But he said, I really can see that you're trying, and I'm so thankful that you're becoming the woman I fell in love with again. Oh. And I think that was my first indicator that it was working.
Oh,
yeah.
That must have been a great moment. It must have melted.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And there's been many more indicators since then. It's only gotten better.
And so I want to touch on I statements since you brought that up, which is, they win Worst Relationship Advice of the Week awards, like, every month or so. I get a new one. And you use that for a while. So I kind of just want to check in on that, just hear what your experience with. Did you ever get this kind of response from, or what's a kind of a typical I statement that you would use with him?
I would just say, I feel really hurt when you say that, or this makes me feel so disrespected, or I just can't understand why this is happening. I just want to feel loved. I guess I even sort of said desires sometimes, but they just weren't pure desires.
Right.
And they were very controlling. They were very focused on how I wanted him to feel. I wanted to feel loved. I wanted him to be affectionate. I felt hurt and angry when he wasn't affectionate. So it was just very controlling.
Okay. And so, so now it seems like, it seems obvious why it wasn't working, because you can see the control in it. But at the time you didn't know that. And there's a lot of places that tell you that this is a good way to communicate in a relationship. And so
yeah,
it must have been pretty frustrating when that wasn't working at all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But so you have this new approach and you're getting this much better response from him. What is it like now? What's your relationship like?
It's amazing. And really, it's amazing. And it's not perfect because I have such a big mouth and I am a mere mortal woman and I still fall back sometimes into really needing to prove that I'm right. And it just never goes well. It definitely becomes a blow up every time, but that happens so rarely now. And we bounce back so much quicker. I can't remember the last time that he said he wanted to leave. I really can't. It's been so long. Definitely no talks of sleeping with someone else. He's even almost completely stopped drinking. And like I said, he's very affectionate with me. He's always telling me how much he loves me, that he's in love with me, compliments. He's generous. Like I said, we have an amazing sex life. He initiates more than I do at this point instead of me getting rejected every day. We just went on vacation together a couple weeks ago and we had a wonderful time. And it's so nice. And I guess one little story, actually, he knew I was coming on this podcast. I've shared with him about this program and how much it's helped me. And he's a huge fan. But to be honest, we had a little bit of a rough week last week. I was going through some personal stuff that unrelated to him, but it was really putting strain on both of us. And we were at each other's throats pretty much all week. And at one point I was so frustrated that I said, I'm supposed to be doing this podcast on Tuesday and I feel like such a fraud. I was like, you're supposed to be happy and be adored and be in a good place. And I don't feel like I'm there right now. And he said, yes, you are. We are a great couple and I do adore you. So that really made my day.
Oh, absolutely. That's what we all want to hear. Yes, you are. You're doing, you're adored. So, and just so you know, Hannah, I've had the same experience where I'm going to give a talk to other women about how to be respectful. And I'm telling my husband how to drive or something, on the way. So I'm like, all right, well, so much for being a good role model. You just have to be a horrible warning, right? If you can't be good example, you just have to be a horrible warning. I think Catherine Aird said that. So, but I really do hear, how adored you feel now, it sounds like.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah, I give you so much credit. Now, this has been a fast turnaround. When did you how long has it been since you started?
Yeah, it has. It's been a fast turnaround. I started in August of 2020 was when we had that huge blow up and I started the Ridiculously Happy Wife program. So it's been almost a year and a half, but honestly, I saw results pretty much instantly. I was actually invited to be on this podcast over a year ago and I ended up canceling because we had a blow up. And again, I felt like a fraud. I wanted to just make sure that I was more consistent and that I really actually had my miracle before I told other women. But at this point, I'm so confident the skills work and I have my miracle and I'm ready to share it with everybody.
Oh, wow. I love it, Hannah. And I really like this piece too of, because none of us has a perfect marriage. I don't have a perfect marriage. You don't have a perfect marriage because none of us are perfect women. We're all mere mortal women. And I kind of love that it sounds like you're a lot more confident now than you were back then. What gives you that confidence?
I feel empowered. I know how to handle myself. And I know even if we're having a bad week like we were last week, I know exactly how to get it right back on track. And that's just what I did. I sat down with him and I said, I apologize to you for being so disrespectful when I did the various things that I had done over the week. And he appreciated it and he apologized for his side and the peace was instantly restored. And that does give me so much confidence.
Yeah. So I love that. I love your humility and your courage and saying those words. And I always think about new podcast listeners when they hear a woman say, yeah, I just tell them, I apologize for being disrespectful, right? Do you remember how you felt the first time you uttered those words, or how hard was it to get those words out of your mouth? Like, what was that like?
Oh, it was so hard. I felt embarrassed on one side, really just sheepish. I didn't want to have to apologize. I was afraid he wouldn't accept it. And at the same time, I also felt a little bit stubborn. I didn't feel like I should have to because I hadn't gotten an apology yet. And I thought what he had done was way, way worse. But I forced myself because I realized, okay, you know what? Even if he was way, way worse, you were still very disrespectful here. And you can see that now. And it's about taking accountability for myself and showing him that I don't want to be that person anymore.
Wow. And it sounds like he did respond well.
He did. He did. He did actually respond very surprisingly well.
But it felt pretty vulnerable, and it was not easy to get yourself to do it.
Not at all.
I just always like to have those little caveats in there in case anybody who's listening and maybe has never said those words and would never dream of saying those words at this point. You know, why would you do that, right? And for you, it's really just about being accountable, keeping your side of the street clean, and that's been really powerful in your marriage. So, what's your tip for a woman who is where you were? He doesn't love you. He's not attracted to you. He's rejecting you for sex. He's threatening to sleep with other people. He wants to separate. And she wants to get to where you are now, where he says, yeah, you are. You're doing good. You're adored. Yes, you are. We're a good couple. What's your tip for her? What should she start doing first?
I really think the best place to start is looking for the evidence. And I think that is so important because that's going to give you the confidence to do all of the rest of the skills. You can paint any story in your mind that you want to paint, and you can find evidence that supports it. And if your story is he doesn't love me, he's not attracted to me, he wants to leave, this is hopeless, you can find a lot of evidence to support that, but it's not going to do you any good. If your story is he does love me, there is hope here, we can get this back, you can find evidence for that too. You just have to look for it and start as small as you have to. Even if you're just starting with the fact that he's still in your home. That's a huge step. Because if he didn't want to be, he wouldn't be.
Wow. I love that. It's very inspiring. I love the idea of starting with the tiny little bits. That's enough. That's enough. And how do you get yourself to change that focus when the fear feels really big that he doesn't love me?
I have so many notes on my phone that are titled drop and do 10. It's not even funny because I will do them in the middle of the car, the grocery store, my bedroom, my office, wherever I have to. As soon as I'm starting to have those fears seep in, or I'm starting to have anger seep in, or something's happening, I will stop and write down a list of 10 things I'm grateful for about him, and or 10 pieces of evidence that he loves me, depending on the situation. And by the time I'm done, it's almost impossible to still be in a bad mood because it softens my heart toward him so instantly.
I love that. And so you make your choices in each moment about how you're going to feel and what you're going to focus on.
Yeah.
With the drop and do 10. And by dropping and do 10, we don't mean push-ups. We mean gratitudes, right? Wouldn't that suck if it was, when you feel afraid, do 10 push-ups. It's like, no. So what do you think you'd say to Hannah if you could go back in time and tell her what you know now?
I would tell her not to be so afraid. I would tell her that she does have a good man and she has a committed man and she has a man who loves her, and she doesn't have to be afraid of other people's stories because that's not her story. And she gets to choose her story. She gets to write her own story. And that's so empowering. She really has nothing to be afraid of. She's in good hands with herself. She's in good hands with the skills. She's in good hands with her husband, and she can feel safe.
Yeah, amazing. it sounds like you have caused a miracle in your home in terms of creating a peaceful, passionate relationship where kind of reducing the friction and the conflict very dramatically. So I just want to congratulate you. And also, thank you for being so authentic and vulnerable and sharing the inside of your marriage with us. It's it's very nourishing and makes me feel really connected to you too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. I don't know what I would have done without the skills and without your insights.
Oh, I'm happy that we're on this journey together. So thank you. Something big is happening on the Laura Doyle campus, and you're invited. Last summer, I hosted a free 5-day Adored Wife Challenge, and thousands of women joined to take the practical steps to make their marriages last and thrive. And even I was amazed at the astounding results they got. We're about to start the 5-day Adored Wife Challenge in 2022 on January 10th, where I'll share my best stuff for free. Register now at lauradoyle.org/challenge so you don't miss any of the action, because this only happens twice a year. Join us on our mission to end world divorce and go to lauradoyle.org/challenge. I'll see you there. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that has me outraged this week was sent to me by a student who found this drivel on the website of a well-known marriage expert who definitely means well, but unfortunately promoted some stinky stuff. The student writes, I've been following your program for some months, so I'm thinking this advice might be good for your worst relationship advice segment. I'm still waiting for the fun and passion to kick in, or return rather. Everything else seems to be going well. Thank you for sharing your experience and giving us hope. So sweet. So here's a shout out to thank you for your great contribution to this podcast. Well done on spotting the truly terrible advice. I am so grateful because it is awful, which means it's this week's undisputed winner. Ding, 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 ding. Winner, winner, loser, loser. The advice starts out by saying, it's not needy to want your needs met. Well, sure. Of course, it's your birthright as a woman to be desired and cherished and get special treatment. That's what we're all doing on the Laura Doyle campus, is learning the skills that restore the emotional safety where intimacy thrives and your man's natural desire to be your hero returns. And that's evident because he can't stop doing things to make you ridiculously happy. Yes, you desire things, and desire is the seat of feminine power. And it's normal and appropriate for a wife to want to be cherished. Let's get you that. Let's get you cherished. That's what I want for you. So it's not needy to want your needs met. But it sure sounds a little needy when you say it that way, doesn't it? It's not needy to want your needs met. I can imagine myself in the bad old days of my marriage reading this and saying it to my husband. It's not needy for me to want my needs met. Blah, yuck. That would certainly make me resistible. But sadly, that's the kind of thing I used to say before I learned to spot terrible relationship advice, because I thought it was true. So I was, in fact, very resistible. And that's because there's a silent, implicit you in this sentence. And if we try it on in another context besides marriage, it's pretty obvious that nobody's going to be inspired when you're coming from that perspective. So here's what I mean. For example, imagine a friend says to you, it's not needy for me to want my friendship needs met. And the rest of that sentence that's unsaid but loudly implied is, and you're not doing that. They're really saying you're a pretty lousy friend and that her friendship needs are not met because of you. And doesn't that just make you want to join the witness protection program so you can avoid her? Or let's say your kid says to you, it's not needy for me to want my parenting needs met. There's an implication there. So buy me a new iPhone now. Well, maybe not that, but it doesn't make you feel tender towards your kid either, right? You might fantasize about having them adopted out to some other family so they can get their parenting needs met. These are annoying things to hear because they just criticized you as a friend or as a parent. They also dismissed everything you do to be a good friend or parent, and they got a little demanding, frankly, and entitled about how you owe them, which is very needy. It's the definition of needy. Same goes with bringing this mindset to your marriage, even if you don't say those words out loud. What makes this approach seem so needy is that it's a complaint and a criticism, which are repelling. And it's devoid of your delight and your gratitude and your accountability, which are attractive and endearing qualities. Those are the qualities that draw others to us effortlessly. Demanding and insisting, don't have that same effect. Never have, never will. So the sentence about it not being needy to want your needs met kind of kicks everything off in a cockamamie direction. But then the second part of this advice takes a turn for the worse by saying that the solution to the problem of not getting your needs met is, okay, we need a drum roll for this. So let's say, okay. The expert says, so how can you make sure needs are met in your relationship? Communication and compromise. That's right, folks. Communication and compromise. So that is not just terrible. It's vague. It's uninspiring and it's unoriginal. In fact, tell you what, please raise your hand right now if you've already heard that communication is the key to getting your needs met. Just raise your hand if you've already heard that before. Look at that. Every hand is raised. And I can't even see any of you, but I can feel that your hand is up because who hasn't heard this tired old tripe about communication before? Oh, and compromise. I mean, even if you were born last week, I'm sure somebody must have mentioned this by now. No wonder we all have this misconception that if we just say, I need you to hug me more, or I need you to spend more time with me, or I need to have bedroom time 3 times a week. No wonder we think that that's how we'll start to feel cherished and desired and special. So-called experts are always telling us so, but it's not so. Not in my experience, not in the thousands of students who have arrived at Laura Doyle Connect campus and gone through our training and talked about their marriages either. I mean, if it did work, I don't think any of us would need support for our relationships, right? We just communicate and compromise our way to blissful marriage. So this terrible advice won't make your marriage last and thrive. For that, you need the 6 intimacy skills, which we talk about every single week on this podcast, and they are all laid out step by step in the book, The Empowered Wife. And if you're like most women, you also need the support of other women and a coach to help you learn and practice those 6 intimacy skills. You need the whole connection framework. Because this universal myth that communication and compromise will help your marriage is the opposite of what works. Expecting, demanding, criticizing, complaining, subverting your desires, those are all repelling and resistible. No wonder there are so many divorces, right? People believe this stuff. I believed this stuff, but it only let me down. And for that reason, the advice, how you can make sure needs are met in your relationship, communication and compromise, is the very, very worst relationship advice I have heard. Oh, all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share how to stop your husband from divorcing you. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I cry at work a lot when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm moved. And although I may look like I have smeared mascara on my face, I like to think I'm rocking the smoky eye look.